so that if anything happens or if you have to leave, there is a recording available. And I'm going to share my screen. Oh, hold on one second. Just one second. And so as I said a moment ago, our focus today is on designing target language input. So really helping, our learners take in the new language, whether it's vocabulary or grammatical structures in the target language. That's our focus. So how can we avoid the use of English? Bring that window to the front. Hold on a second. My thing's being persnickety. There we go. And you will get the link to this session as well. And I am hoping, oh, we do have a few more people in. Welcome, everybody. We are just now getting started. Thank you so much. Oh, it's our morning crew. Awesome. So all of you who are here now, we're here in the morning for the first session or the earlier morning. And we will be focusing on designing input in the target language for this session. And I'm all on my own. I don't have the benefit of Karina's design and help for this one. So the first thing we're going to do is go into the chat. And what I'd like you to do first is think about a time, an experience you've had that stands out for you as a success when you taught a lesson to your learners and it was entirely in the target language. And I'd like you to share that success. Like, you know, what did you teach? It's a given that you stayed in the target language because that's the prompt, and then how did you know it was successful? So I'm going to give you a few minutes because you're going to be thinking and typing for a bit. Welcome. You can actually join the activity that's in the chat. We're starting with celebrating a success that you had when you taught a new lesson to your learners in the target language. What did you teach and how did you know it was a success? Or why does it stand out to you? Like, it's the one lesson, it's that lesson where you're like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing what just happened. There's a couple of chats coming in, but take another bit of time. Welcome. We're actually answering a question in the chat. You'll also all see that I've added one of the correct links for the session on summative assessments. I will be getting the one for the modes of communication in just a moment. Oops, hold on. In the meantime, for those of you who just joined us in the chat, we are sharing a success with a lesson we taught entirely in the target language. Like, it stands out to us as as a success? And then as you're finishing those, and there's actually still a few more to come, please take a moment and read through the responses. And actually you can feel free to reply to each other, and kind of share either a follow-up question or a personal example that connects to something that one of the other participants has shared. It is such an amazing moment. One of the most rewarding things about being a language teacher is it is definitely a field in which we can see the success of our learners. We can tell, and they can tell. In some classes, the learners aren't sure that they're making progress. They don't know what making progress looks like. It's hard for them to know that they're doing something new and different. And in world languages and ELD, we can really see it, and our learners can see it. So there is a special moment or spark when we teach that lesson entirely in the target language, and we know, man, this was new to everybody in this room, and they got it. It is absolutely incredible. And I think that's a lot of what you're sharing. And I like what you're sharing about how you know it's successful. Like when students can't wait to respond, they can't wait to speak. They were so prepared and so supported through the strategies that you're using to be able to do that, that they're eager to put themselves out there and try out this new language and these new skills. Buried in the chat, as you're going to start seeing a little bit earlier up, you'll see the correct link for the session that was originally scheduled for Wednesday on summative assessments. And then I'm now putting in the one, it's a combined session. So it's duplicated in PL because there was a difference in how many people, there was a difference in the list of names who registered for one of the sessions versus the other. So I left them both intact, but now they're duplicates. You can only do it once for credit, but this other link that I'm about to put in is the correct link for the session on the modes of communication, on facilitating, communication across the modes, interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. I can't quite remember the exact name right now, but and I think it was partially like simulating those modes in that distance learning environment a little bit too, across the modes of communication. I appreciate your willingness to approach these in an asynchronous way. There has been, since the time that I had originally scheduled these workshops and had planned to do them, there has been an urgent and massive request and project placed on our department that is going to eat up all of our time. It's okay. It's okay, Muzue. I have not yet shared the link. You haven't missed anything. I will be sharing the slide deck in a little bit. Actually, it'll be shared before the end of today. But what I am sharing in the chat, and I will post it again because I'm not quite sure what time you arrived versus what time I shared it, is the correct link for Wednesday's offerings, which are asynchronous now. And it turns out I totally mixed up in PL. I don't know. I don't even know what I did. I did something completely wrong, and it's just YouTube videos and not your trainings. So I am posting those links in the chat for you here, and a new email will come out probably from PL, and the link in PL will be updated. Because these were originally set as in-person events, they are still, like the one for today, this afternoon, that I'm not able to do. You do need to do it by the end of the day today. It will actually disappear from PL, and you won't have access to it after today. Similarly, the sessions that are available for Wednesday need to be done by the end of the day on Wednesday. You can do them earlier, but they need to be done by the end of the day on Wednesday. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. And I want to thank you again for your contributions. Oops, hold on, stop share. Let's try that again. I thought I was sharing the correct screen. Now I'm going to have Karina's problem where it's not going to let me share what I want. Let's try that again. See if I can share it. I picked one screen. It picked the other. There we go. That's better. All right. Weird. So there we go. Our guiding questions for this session are: why is it important to conduct new lessons in the target language and avoid explaining them in English as the student's home language for most of us who are in world languages? And then what are some strategies we can use to build the comprehensible input into all lessons so that we can stay in the target language? And then how do we structure a target language lesson for success by learners? And we're actually going to talk a little bit about both vocabulary, and we're going to look at a specific model for grammar or language structure lessons that you could adapt for use if it works with your way of teaching. Our learning targets for today are that you can design comprehensible target language input for a new vocabulary lesson, and that you can design comprehensible target language input for a lesson on a new structure in the language. And finally, that you can provide learners with opportunities to check their understanding and begin to use the new words and structures with guidance and support, leading up to eventually their independent, successful use of those new words or those new structures. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at, I just realized I forgot to share the audio. We're going to take a look at a video, a target language video. Yep, everything for Raquel, everything, the training that was originally scheduled for this afternoon, as well as now only 2 opportunities, unfortunately, on Wednesday, just because I couldn't find materials that suited what I was trying to do for the breaking out of all the modes of communication. So I had to combine them together into one training. So yes, it is all asynchronous, and you go to the different Google Forms, and within the Google Forms has everything you need, the videos as well as your activities. Perfect. All right. Sorry, I realized I forgot to share with audio. And when we do that, actually, oops, I want to also check something. Sorry. Now I'm the one having a little bit of a computer malfunction. Nope, we're good. All right. All right, we're going to watch a short video called from a group called Star Talk. And I don't know how familiar you all would be with Star Talk necessarily. It is a federally funded program specifically designed to promote the teaching and learning of critical need languages for the United States. And so it does seminars for teachers, as well as language camps for learners in languages such as Pashto and Dari and Farsi, as well as Russian, Ukrainian, Portuguese, although I think Portuguese has now been canceled, and then also Arabic are the primary languages in which you see these programs. So if you haven't heard of Star Talk, I wanted to give you that context, that this is a group that specializes in really building up the capacity to teach these languages through training for teachers. Often these are native speakers of the language who may not have ever even had the opportunity to attend school. So we want to train them in how to teach a new language, and that involves sometimes training in school as well. And also they do camps for students. So this training, this video you're going to see, was actually recorded as part of the conferences they have every year to bring together some of the program directors to give them new updates each year and continue to train them on the strategies so that they can share those with their instructional team back in their hometowns. So we're just going to take a quick look at this, and there's going to be a task, of course, afterwards. So, and you'll have the link to this video in the slide deck afterwards. Make sure your sound is up. Mine is up. Here we go.
It's easy to say that the target language must be used at least 90% of the time in world language classrooms. Everyone understands that it will be used 100% of the time in the immersion classroom. The real challenge lies in making the language comprehensible when delivering lessons that are cognitively engaging for learners. This video will consider two key questions. Why is it so important to use the target language? And how do we make input comprehensible?
So I want to, when we resume, I wanted to give you a chance just in case, I know as a learner myself, I tend to be a note taker. So if you are that person like me and need a moment to go get a piece of paper and a pencil because you want to jot down key ideas, I'm going to give you a second to do that now. I should have done that before. So I'm going to give you just a second and I'll get this queued back up to where we were.
Why is it important to use the target language? Language learning is a skill and must be practiced to be improved. Administrators, parents, and students understand this concept easily when talking about a sport or learning to play a musical instrument. Children improve in sports and music because they practice the skills on a regular basis. It's fairly easy to agree that a child becomes a better musician by playing consistently for many years. It makes sense that learners develop their language skills by using the language. They must be immersed in the language and must use the language as a means of communication. ACTFL recommends that educators use the language at least 90% of the time at all levels of instruction. The 90% plus gives educators a goal, a measure of best practice.
I actually learned that from Dr. Muller's methods class, and I think that works very well for target language use for language classrooms. I think because we're going to use 90% of the target language, and then sometimes we do have that necessity for the 10% to explain something, right? So when we're switching, we could use something like an English hat or English crown, so that you let the students know that that's a signal for switching back to English, and I'm going to explain something real quickly. And then when I take that off, students know that I'm going to switch back to Chinese. So I think that's a very good way to help the students, stay tuned in what you're going to do and what kind of language are you going to use.
To meet this goal, language teachers must believe that it is possible to use the target language in the classroom. They must not think that their language is too hard or feel that they have too much to cover to conduct their lessons in the target language. Even the kindergarten teacher who is working in the children's first language knows just how long it takes to explain the routine of lining up appropriately to students. What happens on day one sets the expectations for what will happen in future classes. If the teacher uses English, learners will expect and wait for the teacher to use English. Mimi Met, in Making Meaning in the Immersion Classroom, explains this clearly.
When introducing new words to your students, it's often tempting to use English to define new words or to explain complex concepts. Research on early immersion classrooms is very clear that language acquisition occurs best when students are immersed completely in the target language. One reason you need to avoid translating or asking students to translate for you is that students quickly figure out that they don't have to try to get meaning from what you say. It's challenging for students when they have to work to make meaning from what they're hearing in a new language. If students know you'll explain anything they don't understand in English or will translate for them, they probably won't have much reason to work on understanding you when you speak. After all, why work hard if someone will help you avoid all that hard work?
If the teacher consistently uses the target language, learners accept that the target language is and will be the language of communication. Learners recognize that they learn a great deal from this approach.
Like every day was just packed with learning, and you learn this after another. It's just you learn so much in one day.
You're pretty much immersed in the language 24 hours a day.
The reason that I think target language is really important is that for foreign language learners, they actually are not going to learn the language in the original context. They don't have that environment of, the language learning. So that's why I think it's very important for teachers to try to create an authentic language environment in the classroom. So I believe the input should be really rich on the teacher's part, or else they didn't get that kind of environment or input outside the classroom. And according to research, actually, maximum target language use really promotes effective learning on the part of the students. So that's why, and it has been working very well for the students. They do feel that more confident, and their learning has been more effective, actually.
For most world language teachers, it is easy to stay in the target language. The key question becomes one of comprehension. Do my students understand the message? For input to be understood, it must be comprehensible. This means that the learner must understand most of what is being said for learning to occur. The input must also be meaningful. Learners must want and need to understand what they are hearing. There are a variety of strategies that teachers use to make language comprehensible. Beginning learners need strong visual support to understand a message, and teachers working with new language learners often use gestures to increase comprehension. Teachers routinely use their hands for emphasis, exaggerate facial expression, act out, or pantomime. The use of gestures captures and holds the interest of the learner while they are actively processing the meaning of the message. Teachers further enhance meaning by using additional visual cues. Props or manipulatives, graphics, realia, images, and multimedia. It is important for teachers to continue to use gestures and other visual cues as learners become more proficient. Visual cues continue to enhance meaning as teachers explain more abstract topics. Consider how Lu Gong makes the language comprehensible throughout this activity. Were you able to figure out the concept that was being taught? With demonstrations, actions, and gestures, the teacher conveyed that living things eat, drink, and grow. Context clues are also important as learners work to understand the message. Learners are likely to have some knowledge about the topics, and teachers can draw on that prior knowledge to make the lesson more comprehensible. In the Portuguese lesson shown here, the teacher has created a visual organizer for the key content words of the lesson: numbers, colors, shapes, and flags. Learners also benefit when they know the purpose of the lesson. At the beginning of the lesson, students hear and see the learning targets for the day. Finally, teachers use the target language to make the target language more comprehensible. As students acquire more language, teachers slow down or simplify their speech, using their voice to place emphasis on key words or ideas. They allow the tone of their voice to match what they are saying, and they paraphrase to make the meaning of new words comprehensible. Using visuals, context clues, and language is not enough to guarantee that the learner will understand the message. The teacher must check often to make sure that learners are understanding what is being said. Watch as teachers use simple checks for understanding with their students.
Похоже, потому что, because, да, история, интересная история. Это Кирилл и Мефодий. Кирилл.
Teachers must also ensure that all students have enough time to process the message. Strategies, such as think, pair, share, give all learners a chance to produce language with a partner. The use of language chunks, or sentence frames, allows learners to use new words in a meaningful pattern without moving too quickly from input to output. Based on what you have heard and seen in this video, what advice would you give to a teacher?
And actually, we are going to do, I like that task. We might come back to that task, but we are going to do something else in just a moment. So you're going to take what you have there, and actually I will take a pause here. And actually I will go with what she was saying. Based on what you saw there, what rings out to you as advice that you would give to a new teacher who's just coming into teaching language? If you had to condense it down to a couple of key things to share and support that teacher with, what would they be? And if you would like to use your microphone, you are welcome to, or you can type in the chat. Yep, both of those points that are there already are very important. Slow your speech down a little bit. And it's interesting because there's a fine line, right? You want to slow it down. And yet you also want to support learners to get to the point where they can grasp what they need to grasp out of normal speed of native speech. But at first we do need to slow it down. We want to find that fine line between going so slow that it kind of loses meaning and having just the right speed to give the learners what they need. Teaching in context, gestures, visual supports, facial expressions, and repetition. I like that too, that it is possible. And I wrote that down as she was speaking as well, that we have to believe that our languages can in fact be taught in the target language, and that our language is not too hard to learn for learners, and that the point is not covering. It really doesn't matter how much we cover, right? What matters is what students can do. So if we do well-designed lessons and we're really also strategic about our learning targets, and we choose learning targets that will maximize not only the learner's success this year, but lay the groundwork for the important skills they're going to continue to need as they pursue this language in future years, it won't matter that we didn't cover whatever X number of pages per se for those of us in world language courses with the, like a textbook. The students ultimately, if you look at the span of the time they spend with us and where they end up in terms of their ability to comprehend and to speak and to listen, to view language and to present and write and sign and speak, they'll go further if we are really thoughtful about which learning targets we choose to hone in on and developing powerful lessons around those that will support our learners going forward. Repetition is really important as well. Thank you. All right. So we're going to dive into a document, and what's going to, you'll see in a moment that there's two things, and I've provided in the slide deck, and you'll get a link to that a little bit later, the source document, so you don't have to go back to the Jamboard to get it. But for the purposes of our work, we're actually going to be going to a Jamboard. It's not the same one that you were on earlier, for those of you who were with us earlier today. I'm going to put it in the chat, and then I'm going to go there and tell you what I want you to do. So this is a slightly different task than what we did before. So I'm putting the link in there right now. And once again, I hope I did remember to change the settings so that you can edit. That link is in the chat for you now. This time when you get there, what you'll see is there is actually a document in the middle. And this is all about facilitating the use of the target language, assuring that it is used at least 90% of the time, and really looking at immersing our learners in our language-rich environment, giving learners opportunities to demonstrate understanding of what they've learned and so on. So now what you're going to do in this case, you'll see in the upper right corner, I just put a graphic. You can't really use it. It's just a graphic to remind you. You can use the pen tool on the right to circle things that you want to draw attention to. You can use the pen tool to put a question mark near something. You can use the pen tool to put an exclamation point near something that you're like, whoa, that's surprising. And you can draw a star near or on something that's important. You can also use the sticky note tool to type a note, and then you might use the pen tool to draw a line, maybe from where that note is to where it is that you want to attach it. For example, if I type, I'm just going to say super important, and this isn't real, I'm going to delete it, but super important. And then I save it. Okay, and it's up here, and sorry, my mouse just got stuck. There we go. And then you can take the pen tool and you can connect it to something. Okay, so you're gonna have a few moments to take a look at this. I'm gonna move my tools out of the way here. And you can actually annotate this document using the tools available to you in this Jamboard by either the sticky note tool, which is the one below the arrow, or the pen tool, which is the one at the very top. And as I said, I reminded you that your annotations could be a simple symbol, circling something, starring something, and remember you're all doing it at the same time. So it can get a little messy, just so you know. I'm gonna try to delete mine now. Nope, it's not letting me select that one. Delete. I'm trying to select the thing. Oh, I'm gonna erase it. Beneath the pen is an eraser tool. You also have different colors of pen, just like you have different colors of sticky notes. It's funny how we look at it, like drawing a line seems so easy until we try to do it with a mouse. Ooh, that was gorgeous. As you finish up this task, feel free to add to this by choosing the sticky notes, for example, to highlight something that you underlined, share a personal example, ask a question, so that you can further work with the document. And we can have a little bit of a community around the information in this document. Ooh, I like that, connecting your sticky notes to the text. I think we have one person with us now who wasn't with us this morning. This tool is called Jamboard. It's actually made by Google. It's made to actually accompany a physical product that's actually a board that would be in your room, a little bit like some of you might remember the Promethean interactive whiteboards we had. It's a little bit like that. But as you can see, you can use the Jam, which is what they call these boards, but you can use the Jam without having the physical product in your room. Just a reminder that, as you can see, everything you type or do is immediately visible, drawings, typing, and so it is important to keep in mind that you'll want to be sure that your learners see themselves as part of a learning community where they would use a tool like this respectfully and appropriately, because you won't be able to unsee anything inappropriate that they might choose to type or draw. You won't be able to see it first and keep the other students from seeing it either.
I have a question. Is there any way to lock the drawing tool and just use the sticky notes?
And that is a great piece of feedback that should be given to, oh, I don't see feedback on this like most Google tools. That is a great piece of feedback. No.
Okay. I was just curious because I feel like it would be probably less likely to read something, than drawing. I feel like the students would draw more than write it, but yeah, anyway.
Right. And as you can see, I mean, it's a really simple tool. There are very few features, right? There are some tools available on the left and you don't really get to, you either have people can look at it without touching or they can edit completely. You can add new boards, you can delete boards. I'm going to try something. I'm not going to actually do it. I think I, as the owner, could delete anybody's post, but that wouldn't necessarily happen before they saw it. Right. And I can take the eraser tool and erase the anything that they drew. And as you can see, I can't lock down. Oh, I could. I should have done that. The one thing I could have done is I could have locked the text into the background. I would have had to have saved it as an image instead of just doing a screenshot copy paste. But if I saved it as an image, I could load it as background so that the users couldn't accidentally move it or delete it.
I tried to do it myself right now, and I was able to delete someone else's line. But then
right, because you're all editors.
Yes.
Like you can all delete everything here. Like I said, so you really want to be thoughtful about doing this once you and your learners are part of a community where we all understand how we are going to interact in these spaces. Okay. So hopefully that line that just got I watched get deleted was by the person who deleted it, not somebody else. Awesome. So what I like about this, and what I like about a tool like this, even though we have to use it cautiously, is it really helps us if this was a chart or a graph, even for novice learners, or a menu, or a short poem, or the lyrics of a song, or there's a school schedule, your learners could easily annotate on this and still kind of draw out what they have questions about. You could have them use different things in different ways, saying that you want them to circle things they understand, put a question by something they aren't sure about, put an exclamation mark by a new word, but they think they understand based on context, even though we've never taught it. So you could use this tool in different ways once you're sure that your learning community is ready for that. And it makes it possible for you to see what the students are paying attention to and attuning to in the target language without them needing a lot of language to make that happen. So they can they're not needing a lot of English. You can tell them to only use the drawing tools if they're not ready yet to add the sticky notes to it, or you can limit what they put on the sticky notes to single words. I'm back in my Zoom, so I'm sharing my screen. If you're looking at the Jamboard, you won't see my share right now. But when you click on the thing to make a sticky note, you might have noticed the colors. You can actually tell the students to do different kinds of sticky notes based, using different colors and put different kinds of words on those colors. You could put a series of words up out of order and have students move it into the correct order. You could color code those so that on each board that you create, so if I move to the right, I've just created a new blank board for you, that there's a different out of order sentence with the sticky notes, and all they have to do is drag them around. Just remember that if you have a whole group of kids doing it, they can't really all drag it around at once, right? You'd have to select somebody and have them do the first one or choose what word they think goes first, and then like during a live in-person class or maybe Zoom, if it turns out we're all like distance learning, you could ask students to do specific things individually if you want them to move content, because if you have the whole class try to move it all at once, it's going to be, you know, kids virtually fighting over who's grabbing which item and trying to move it. Okay. So any quick thoughts, anything that anybody would like to jump on the microphone and say or share about the information in this document? Okay. So what's interesting to me, some of the things that came out that you were drawn to were authentic context, real world context, that, believe it or not, being able to conjugate a verb in the present tense is not a real world context. Meaning whenever we go to the store, nobody says first, well, I'll ring you up after you conjugate this ER verb correctly, then I'll take care of you, right? And it turns out if we make a mistake with our verbs, generally speaking, the cashier is still going to understand us and what we need. Yes, we're going to keep working towards greater and greater and greater accuracy, but meaning is what's going to be important first, both making meaning and negotiating meaning. The other thing that I like, I mean, someone drew out to the word before, right? On the third bullet, learners demonstrate that they understand what they have heard, read, or viewed before we have them try to produce that language themselves in spontaneous interpersonal tasks or in presentational tasks where they have the opportunity to refine and draft and peer edit and draft some more and perfect. That they're going to have, and I would add to that, it's generally they will demonstrate multiple times and in different ways their comprehension before we elicit production, right? Okay. So let's head back to our slide deck. And I am going to go ahead, just so I don't forget, I'm going to put the link to the slide deck in the chat. This recording will go up on the Distance Learning Hub with the other recorded trainings, and I will link the slide deck to that as well. I am back in the Zoom room. If you're still on the Zoom board, you can actually head back to Zoom if you'd like to see what I'm sharing right now, because I'm back in the slide deck. So I'm going to go into the chat right now. I'm going to put the link to our slide deck today so that you have continuing access to that Jamboard. It will be available for you. It is completely free. Let me put at the beginning of this. And the source document in a format that might be a little bit easier to read, because it will be the full page document in case you would like to consult that document again. And through our discussion, you kind of already started on kind of thinking about the implications for our work, looking at what that document calls out. Some of the implications include authentic real-world contexts for the language that our students are acquiring and practicing and using. An additional implication includes the fact that we are going to focus on input before output, and we're going to check understanding in multiple ways and over multiple attempts on that input before we begin requiring the output. And actually, Raquel, just because you might like this, this will turn off every time I leave the slide deck, but Google Slides also has our closed captions, so we'll do that. And we're going to leave Google Classroom, the Google slide deck, and go to a video again. So you saw that this lesson was available in the last video. We're actually going to watch for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to skip a whole bunch, and we're going to kind of go towards the end of the video. Okay, so I'm going to start this video. We're going to watch for about 10 minutes, and then I'll skip us ahead. And again, if you would like to have some paper handy to jot down a couple of things, you can do that. And I'd like you to try to observe both the instructor as well as the learners and how the learners are responding. Now, this lesson, as I referred to before, was actually delivered at a conference for the leaders of these Star Talk programs, but the lesson itself has been originally designed and delivered for a group of first grade students in I believe, an immersion school for Portuguese, or it might have been first grade students in one of those summer Star Talk camps that they have. So before I jump on this video, grab some paper if you'd like it. You will have a task in breakout rooms, I believe, if I'm remembering my own presentation correctly. So you might want to think about what you're noticing from the teacher and what you're noticing from the students. And of course, if you're like me, you're going to be trying to learn the Portuguese yourself along the way.
Retângulo.
Oh. Come on. There we go.
Bandeira do Brasil, e essa é a bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Aqui. A bandeira do Brasil tem verde. Verde na bandeira do Brasil. Tem verde, como esse guarda-chuva é verde na bandeira do Brasil. A minha camisa também é verde. Então, a bandeira do Brasil, sim, tem verde. A bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem verde, sim ou não? Não, não tem verde na bandeira dos Estados Unidos, mas sim tem verde na bandeira do Brasil. Então, vamos colocar o verde da bandeira do Brasil. A bandeira do Brasil tem um retângulo verde. E esse retângulo verde tem 1, 2, 3, 4 pontas. Uau! Então, eu vou colocar essa bandeira verde, esse retângulo verde na bandeira do Brasil.
I'm just going to pause this right here to let you know a little bit more context. She works closely with the teachers in her elementary school. Some of the common content in first grade includes colors and shapes, so she's folding that into this lesson as well to support the classroom teacher.
A bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem branco na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Branco na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Branco como esse quadro, branco como esse papel. Na bandeira do Brasil também tem branco, porque na bandeira do Brasil tem as estrelas brancas. Esse retângulo branco da bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem 1, 2, 3, 4 pontas, como o retângulo da bandeira do Brasil. Então, eu vou pôr esse retângulo na bandeira dos Estados Unidos, branco. Tem branco na bandeira dos Estados Unidos? Sim ou não? Sim. Tem branco na bandeira do Brasil? Sim ou não? Sim, também tem branco. São as estrelas. As estrelas são brancas nas duas bandeiras. Na bandeira do Brasil tem estrela branca e na bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem estrelas brancas. Os dois têm branco. Muito bem. A bandeira do Brasil tem um losango amarelo. Ele é amarelo. A blusa dela é amarela também. Onde mais tem amarelo? Onde tem amarelo? Amarelo! Da sua blusa também tem amarelo, as suas flores. Esse aqui também é amarela, né? Essa toalha de mesa é amarela, muito bem. Na bandeira... Ah, seu caderno é amarelo, como a bandeira do Brasil tem amarelo, muito bem. A bandeira do Brasil tem amarelo. Aqui na bandeira do Brasil, o losango. O losango que tem 1, 2, 3, 4 pontas. amarelo na bandeira do Brasil. Amarelo também tem na bandeira dos Estados Unidos? Sim ou não? Não, não tem amarelo na bandeira dos Estados Unidos, mas sim tem amarelo na bandeira do Brasil. Tem um losango amarelo na bandeira do Brasil, mas não tem um losango amarelo na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Não. Na bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem um quadrado azul. Ele é azul. Ele é azul como esse peixe é azul. Ele é azul como o vestido dela é azul. Onde mais tem azul? Azul. Olha, vamos olhar azul. Azul, Brandy, muito bem. Sua blusa é azul, como a bandeira do Brasil. Azul, como a bandeira do Brasil. Ah, seu quadradinho, como a bandeira do Brasil. Exatamente, é azul. Tem um quadrado azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. É igual. É igual. E é azul. Tem azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Tem azul na bandeira do Brasil? Sim ou não? Azul. Não quadrado. Não quadrado. Azul. Sim ou não? Sim, também tem azul na bandeira do Brasil. Mas vamos colocar o azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Tem azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Sim. Mas o azul da bandeira do Brasil não é quadrado. O azul da bandeira do Brasil é um círculo. Todo mundo, pega o seu dedo, põe o seu dedo. Vem comigo, pega o dedo. Círculo. É um círculo azul. Então, tem azul na bandeira do Brasil, tem azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Azul, azul. Tem círculo na bandeira dos Estados Unidos? Sim ou não? Não, não tem círculo. Tem azul? Sim, tem azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Então, eu vou colocar... Tem azul na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. A bandeira do Brasil tem... Vem comigo. Círculo. Muito bem. Está aqui o círculo da bandeira do Brasil. Uau! A bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem vermelho. Vermelho. Olha só. Vermelho na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. A bandeira do Brasil tem vermelho? Sim ou não? Não, não tem vermelho na bandeira do Brasil, mas sim tem vermelho na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Onde mais tem vermelho? Olha, vermelho, 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 vermelho. Seu vestido é vermelho, Natália. Seu colar é vermelho. Onde mais tem vermelho? A cadeira é vermelha, como a bandeira dos Estados Unidos tem vermelho. Muito bem. Então, vamos colocar o vermelho na bandeira dos Estados Unidos. Ah! Como tem vermelho, azul e aqui. Então, tem vermelho na bandeira dos Estados Unidos, mas não tem vermelho na bandeira do Brasil. Muito bem. E agora? Tem estrelas. Tem estrelas. Estrela. Pensa, 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 pensa. Tem estrela. Não fala, pensa. Fala pra ela, fala pra ela, fala. Fala pra ela, fala. Fala pra ela, fala. Fala pra ela, fala o nome. 1, 2, 3.
All right, we're going to jump to the end right now and see a little bit more about how this lesson wraps up.
Tá bom? Então espera. Primeiro, eu. Tá bom. Então, eu vou falar, tá bom? Pensa, tá bom? O retângulo do Brasil é verde. Sim? Sim ou não? Sim. Então, o retângulo do Brasil é verde. E tem 1, 2, 3, 4 pontas. Muito bem. Agora, vocês comigo. Nós dois, tá bom? O retângulo dos Estados Unidos é branco e tem 4 pontas. Muito bem. Agora, com seu amiguinho, com seu amiguinho, com seu amiguinho, com seu amiguinho. Muito bem. Tá bom. 1, 2, 3. Eu quero ouvir. Vamos lá. O losango da bandeira do Brasil é amarelo e tem 4 pontas. Muito bem. Vamos ver mais um, mais um. Faz com o seu amiguinho, faz com o seu amiguinho, faz. Muito bem. É sério. Aham. Sim. Muito bem. Aham. Oh, muito bem, eu ouvi e vi vocês falando. Muito bem, muito bem. Tá bom, 1, 2, 3, todo mundo eu quero ouvir, tá bom? O círculo do Brasil é azul e tem 0 pontas. Não tem pontas, muito bem. Mais um.
Okay, so take a minute to think about what you just saw, and then we're going to get into another task. Sorry. There we go. All right. I am going to be putting you into breakout rooms. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy all of this text and I'm going to put it in the chat because you will still have access to the chat when you are in your breakout rooms. That way, when you see which breakout room you're in, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you will know what your task is without having to memorize all this. I mean, theoretically, I suppose you could take a picture with your phone as well. It will be kind of a long text or a long chat message, but there you go. So I have put into the chat what the task is for each breakout room. And you're going to be talking about the video that you just saw. So breakout room 1, there's only going to be 2 people in each. Breakout room 1, why target language based on this video? What did watching this video bring out for you in terms of why using the target language is important? Breakout room 2, you're going to focus on, in addition to speaking Portuguese, what other strategies did she use to foster and check the learner's comprehension, and how important were those strategies? Breakout room 3, how did learners participate and engage in the lesson? And breakout room 4, what could be the learning targets for this lesson? And those learning targets would be expressed in student-friendly language, starting with I can. You are free, if you finish your task early, I recognize that 1 or 2 of these tasks might take less time than 1 or 2 other tasks. You're free to also discuss other aspects of the video or the other tasks, but each room should be prepared to share out what they discussed or came up with for their task, for their breakout room. So can you use your reaction buttons, please, to, hold on a second, actually you can't because I can't see anybody. Never mind, I can't use those. Can you, oh yes, I can. Let's go to the participant list. If you go to the participant list, there we go. Can you use either like the check mark or the thumbs up to let me know if you understand the task before I send you into your rooms? You can do that by clicking on the participant list in your tools at the bottom of Zoom. And then at the bottom of the list of names of participants, it will give you the option to choose a yes, no, and under more, there's thumbs up, thumbs down. So give me a sign that you understand the task, meaning you're going to be sent to one of 4 breakout rooms. Depending on which breakout room you are sent to, you will answer one of these questions for sure. And if you have time, you can discuss the other questions. And I have put the questions in the chat for you. Okay. We doing okay? I see a few people who haven't responded to let me know that they understand the task. So what I may do is pop into the rooms and just check on you and make sure. I did put the tasks for all 4 rooms in the chat, and you are going to be sent to those breakout rooms. Give me a second. It's gonna be 4 rooms, so you'll be in pairs. You're going to be sent there now. welcome back. And I'm going to start with, let me share my screen so we can see the task. I am going to start with breakout room 1. And we're going to hear a little bit of what they discussed regarding, based on this video, why is it important to use the target language? So Deanna or Lisa, what would you like to say?
We just talked about why use the target language, and we're like, well, that's because that's what we're teaching. But we also talked about how it increased our focus on what was happening, and that we also picked up other expressions that we were not officially being taught, like something as simple as very good, because she repeated it so many times. I picked up how to say very good in Portuguese.
Exactly. Is there anything else that you'd want to add, Lisa, or did that cover it?
Nope, that covered it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to, if they were thinking about why should we use the target language? Just a quick opportunity to jump in on that question before we move on to question 2.
Oh wait, I did lie. I was, when she was clarifying, when she noticed that students were unsure, she was asking about the color or the shape on Brazil's flag. Teaching in the target language allows us to teach other things outside of our lesson. So she's showing them how to make corrections, or like she's teaching all these other little pieces of the language without expressly teaching that. So while the focus was on colors and shapes and all of that, allowing students to see how you correct yourself, how to ask clarifying questions. If you're doing everything in the target language, they're getting all of those important details.
And one of the things I would bring out as well, and thank you, Lisa, that's super important, it goes right along with this, is that when you're teaching in the target language, you as the teacher are going to probably use complete sentences almost all of the time whenever it's appropriate to do so. And it didn't matter, it wasn't important that the students in this lesson didn't know all the parts of speech of the sentence and what went together. And she would respond and she would do commands and ask the group to do things. And she knew full well that that group did not totally know what words she was using or why they were spelled the way they were spelled if you were to write them out, or that there were verb forms and verb agreement, subject verb agreement, and so on. But the use of complete sentences is really important, and through her gestures and then the repetition and the gestures combined of target parts of those sentences, the students were able to understand what they needed to understand. And that really is one of the key things as well of like how target language works successfully. Before I move to question 2, I saw a couple things pop up in the chat. So yes. Oh yes, we'll take a look. The 8:30 session will be in the Distance Learning Hub. A little bit later, I'll need some time because I have to go process the video and get it uploaded to YouTube. So it will be up in the Distance Learning Hub, probably on, I need to figure out where to put it because it really should go on the content page probably. So I might need to develop a space to put the recordings for trainings for specific subject areas and content areas. This isn't a technology lesson, so it's not going to be on that page. Okay. Let's move on to breakout room 2. In addition to speaking Portuguese, what other strategies did she use to foster and check the learner's comprehension, and how important were these strategies? Juan and Krista, what would you say about that?
Yeah, for me, I think the vocabulary that she wrote on the board is very helpful because I don't understand the language at all. So those visuals are really helpful to me.
That makes a lot of sense. And it brings up something we know too, that while we're trying to replicate what happens to a very young child when they learn their first language, the fact of the matter is these are not infants and toddlers. They are at least a little bit older than that, depending on, what grade you're teaching. And they come with some language experience already, and they come with some life experience. And once they hit the point where they can decipher words relatively accurately, particularly in languages, all languages have some cognates with English, but in languages that have a lot of words that are similar between the target language and English, we can really leverage that by writing it down, because that's an advantage that older learners have compared to people learning their first language as an infant and toddler. We often hear that it's harder to learn a language when you're older, but there are certain advantages that we should take advantage of, actually. And one of them is the fact that we can show them the printed word for the, in many languages, we can show them the printed word, or we can, even if it's written in a script that is not the Roman alphabet, seeing what it should look like combined with hearing it. And often many languages now have a way to also provide kind of a Roman alphabet version of what that script in that language or those characters should look like, or sound like, is very helpful to these learners who are older and have some capacity to read and interpret and do sound symbol correspondence and so on. Krista, did you want to add anything else to that?
Sure. To add to that observation that she used visual references and cues, she also fostered the learner's comprehension through lots of repetition and putting things out there in context, referring to their clothing and things in the room. So they were applying the language across different contexts. And she checked their comprehension with thumbs up, thumbs down, fostered comprehension with her voice inflection when she was like, yes or no. I could have watched her all day. I loved it.
Right. And she also got them to check their comprehension. She did attune to what they were saying back, even though she did almost exclusively choral response, as in the whole class responded at the same time. She was listening for that. And she was also checking, as Lisa alluded to in the first question, she also was checking, you know, when she asked her yes, no questions and a few people said no, she was paying attention to that, right? And then adjusting as needed. Yeah, she's very dynamic. And you have the link to the full video if you'd like to see the chunk we skipped so that you could learn the whole lesson. You have that link in the slide deck. Our third breakout room, or sorry, before we move to that, did anybody else have anything they wanted to say about her strategies to foster and check the comprehension? Our third breakout room, the question is, how did the learners participate? How did they engage in the lesson? And Aurora and Ming Shui?
Well, Krista answered some of ours.
She took my answer.
Yes.
It's okay. Repetition is good for us. That we know that.
Yes.
We just said that.
The adults were participating by turn and talk to each other. They also were engaging with the thumbs up and thumbs down. And when she also gave them feedback when she saw that they were talking and speaking, she pointed out to them and giving them the thumbs up. And we also said the words were written on the board. And so she would go back and say if it was blue, she would point to the circle that was blue, and she will, with her other hand, she'll basically do the hand sweep under blue so they know that it was blue.
Thank you. So there was more to say. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your observations. What I like about a task like this is it allows us to talk about any text, a video, a song, a literary text, an informational text. It allows learners to engage by focusing on something specific. And for some of our learners, looking at the entire text kind of globally can be overwhelming. So a task that tells them to really focus on one specific thing can also be a strategy to support their target language use as well as their comprehension. Our final group, what could be the learning targets for this lesson? We didn't have them stated. So I asked this group to please come up with some learning targets that would be student-friendly language, starting with I can. So Mizue and Raquel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. My microphone's going in and out, so if it goes away, that's the reason. So we actually started off with talking about like just the learning targets, not just like I can statements, but in general, we both thought that in that 10 minutes of just watching, there's so many learning targets for this lesson that could be implied. Like it could be as simple as I can count, I can
yes.
know my colors, I can know my shapes, like and then we went all the way up to like I can understand a simple sentence. like some stuff like that, because then she's starting to expand more. Like I can respond yes and no, things like that. So there was like a very wide range of I can statements and target languages for this lesson.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you so much. And notice how doable those can do statements are, right? And that's okay. Sometimes teachers, feel like, but there should be more. No, those are perfectly appropriate statements for, newcomers, especially very early newcomers, right? And also our first year language students. It's a big deal to be able to progress and do things in the target language. So in this case, I had happened to be in your breakout room when you were first talking about this, and you were saying, let's see, it would be, I can count from 0 to 5. Yes, it would. That would be a perfectly good target. They'll get more numbers later. They got the numbers in context. They didn't realize they were learning numbers, and yet they were learning numbers, right? And I can name some basic shapes. And I can identify shapes when I see them in an image, for example. And they didn't know it was a lesson about shapes, and yet over the course of the lesson, through the repetition and the context and the visuals and the gesturing, they learned shapes. And I can identify colors in an image. I can list some colors, and those kinds of things. So absolutely right. Thank you. I'm gonna hop into the chat really quickly. And so par for the course, in fact, a little more egregious on my part than usual. I actually have quite a bit more content here. So in the 5 minutes, here's what I'm going to propose. First of all, for those of you who are world languages teachers, I'd like to take you to the website. Many of you have been in my trainings before, but a couple of you have not. And those of you who have, you've done some work in the Necessful, Actful, Can-Do statements. Necessful stands for the National Council of State Supervisors of Foreign Language, and Actful is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Language, which is our national professional organization. In California, our state association is the California Language Teachers Association, and in Sacramento, your local association is the Foreign Language Association of Greater Sacramento. Of which, by the way, Deanna is on the board, as am I. So there we have a networked series, and we also have a regional, the Southwest Conference on Language Teaching, which is a 9-state region. So we have all of these local to progressively bigger and bigger bodies that are actually here to help us with the process of teaching and learning language. Those of you who've been in my sessions before have been to these can-do statements, and I totally forgot they said they were doing a makeover, and when I got ready to do this session, I was like, oh, it's totally different now. So I am going to give you a little tour of this. We were talking about learning targets just a second ago. If you were to design or refine a lesson that you already have of comprehensible input, particularly if you have a lesson that you were like, I'm going to challenge myself. It wasn't totally target language last time, and I think I could do that this time. I've listed kind of a process you could use here. Define your learning targets first. Break up the new vocabulary into chunks. If it's a 20-word list, break it up, please, and put comprehension checks in between all of those chunks with multiple ways for them to first show they understand, because remember, you want to do input before output, and the final chunks ask them to produce the words in simple ways, kind of like you saw here in the sample lesson. And then define what learners will need. What will be the context for this vocabulary that makes sense for talking about it and using it? What prior knowledge will help them, both in the language and life experience? Because again, don't neglect their life experience. It is an advantage that babies and toddlers do not have. What images will you need, or they? What gestures, what realia? And also accepting the fact that they won't and aren't supposed to understand everything in your lesson. So let me quickly show you what the site looks like now for those of you who haven't been here since they just released the update a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was just last week. So if you scroll down, the top part gives you a little overview of where these statements came from, then how they're organized, which is by the modes of communication, and our standards are actually designed to work in partnership with these statements. California looked at it and said there was no reason for us to reinvent the wheel and write all new learning targets when we've got a national document with sample learning targets across all the modes of communication. Now, this part's the same. This tells you what the can-do statements are. There's these big global kind of year-end proficiency benchmarks, performance indicators that are often used for a unit, like what you'll be able to do by the end of this unit, and then examples, which are discrete day-to-day lesson learning targets. How to use them and how not to use them, that's new. And look at this. It is totally different. So overview and introduction, novice to distinguished, the whole thing, all ranges of proficiency from the big year-end targets all the way down to the discrete lesson, or you can go just to novice, just to intermediate, just to advanced, okay? So it is, you can also look at superior and distinguished, by the way. You can look at intercultural targets as a separate document for the targets, and then there's even a reflection tool that's brand new. So this is a whole new document now, although to the document, the learning targets themselves are not new. But they've redesigned the site and how you get there. So I wanted you to know that before we go today. And here's what I propose going forward. One of the big questions happens to be, what about learning a structure? And I had a series of activities that I very ambitiously thought we would do this morning. There is enough here for me to take this and turn it into another asynchronous workshop. It might be 1 hour, it might be an hour and a half. Can you throw in the chat, would you like me to do that? Would you like me to try to make another little learning opportunity to help work through grammar in the target language, but take what I was going to do here in our Zoom and make it asynchronous? So I will do that if you want me to. Okay. We are super, the lesson bank designers are one thing, but there's a whole bunch of, like I said, it's like urgent, very high priority and massive work that we're in the middle of. So I will do this as quickly as I can. And it will be in PL, and it will have the correct link, so that when you get there and register for it, you'll be able to get the actual documents you need. It will probably be similarly organized as a Google form. To be fair, if I had realized I was going to have to move all these to asynchronous, I probably would have put them in Google Classroom so that we could have some of those discussion and dialogue questions in there. But at this point, this is the last one I'm designing, so I'm probably not going to do that. But I apologize. At the time that I advertised and scheduled these workshops, we had no idea that this project was coming. So, and some of the other work and trying to figure out how we're opening schools and looking at the input from our teachers as well as from other stakeholders and so on. By the way, the board meeting where they will probably take action is this Thursday evening. It is a special board meeting. They don't normally have one in July. That's why it's not on the normal date or day of the week. You are, of course, welcome and encouraged to attend. It will probably run long. Every other district.
Do you know? Do you know on Thursday, are they announcing the plan or are they voting on the plan?
My understanding is that it is an action item to vote on it.
Okay, because I have a presentation that night, and so it
I hope it's before that.
So the vote won't happen until that meeting.
That is, yeah, they can't have a vote without it being in a public forum for discussion and offering public comment.
I didn't want to waste my time or my anxiety over it.
Right. So it won't happen until then and there has to be an opportunity for public comment. What we have seen from every district around us is that there has been understandably, a lot of public comment. So if you are attending, whether because you have to or because you want to, do know that there's a chance the meeting will run very long.
The last one was 3.5 hours.
The last one was in our district, and then the one where we vote, at least in some of the surrounding districts, have been going until like 1 in the morning. And
right. Elk Grove was till 1 in the morning.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I will work on this. I will try to get to it quickly. I'm sure I think my email probably got flooded this morning while we've been doing. Coming up really soon, we actually are, in fact, I'm going to be involved in this work Thursday through Monday, including the weekend. We are working at the state level to design modules of training on the new World Languages Framework that was just adopted by the State Board of Education last week. It is now a document that goes along with our new content standards. It is the first time ever the state of California has actually had both standards and a framework for world languages. So there is going to be substantial training and support provided for teaching in a way that is aligned to our framework. The framework is, of course, the document that's kind of like your guidebook for how to put those standards into practice. So I'll be working on that Thursday through Monday, but I will still be on email and available. I just won't be doing much of anything else like for the district. Okay. So thank you so much for coming and spending the morning with me. I will work on getting this structures portion of comprehensible input into an asynchronous session on PL for you. I'll get that going as soon as possible. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.